Hello, I'm Megs Reynolds, the Executive Director of the Do MoreAgriculture Foundation. We are the national voice and champion for mental health in Canadian agriculture. And joining me today is Clint Malarchuk. And Clint, I'm going to let you introduce yourself for those of you who don't already know who you are.
Oh, you're taking the easy way out, man. Oh, I'm pretty humble. I played, obviously in the NHL. I played 15 years of pro hockey, some in the minors, 12 years in the NHL, and yeah, I'm a mental health advocate. I've struggled with mental illness. Uh, I'd say almost my whole life because I look back at my childhood and that. But yeah, I'm just want to save lives and prevent suicides and suicide attempts, and because I am a survivor and I know that dark place. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
And thank you so much for joining us. And your introduction really introduced our topic for today, which is suicide. And it is a harder or can be a harder topic to talk about. But I'm thankful that we are talking about it and that you have been such a strong advocate because it is such an important thing to talk about. And I think too often, because of the stigma surrounding it in mental health, it's not a conversation that has been said in the past. And then people, feel like what they're going through, they're on their own or no one else has experienced that before. So yeah, thank you for being here. You have already, as you introduced, but spoken publicly about suicidal thoughts and your attempt in the past. You've just commented on, looking back and being able to see like kind of the mental health challenges that you had throughout your life leading up to that. Do you want to maybe take us back to kind of some of the things that were going on in your life that might have led to where you were in that dark place?
Yeah, my father he was a great guy, and I hate knocking him, but he was abusive alcoholic, and I think that caused a lot of my anxiety. I think it caused a lot of my depression, not knowing what to expect when I come home. And but I had obsessive compulsive tendencies very, very young. And was I escaping? It's the chicken and the egg, right? What came first? Was I mentally ill, or did my home life cause my mental illness? I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And but I do know I struggled mightily as a kid, as a teenager. Even when I turned pro in hockey, the obsessive compulsive disorder was very prevalent, but I used it, I would say, more to my advantage. Repetition, working out, everybody thinks you just wash your hands, but and I did that a ton, but no, it's more than that. And a lot of very successful people have obsessive compulsive disorder. uh, but it's when it overtakes your life and maybe puts you down a train tracks to suicidal thinking. And I can relate to it all. I think I wrote a book in 2014. It came out, and I think I went really, really raw and in depth on my OCD and my mental illness and my suicide attempt. So, no, I'm not plugging my book, but if you haven't bought it, you should. Um, but yeah, I've struggled mightily.
Do you, because I know like we were able to connect with your wife and she spoke about being a support person. Um, and you talked about like when you were playing hockey, you were able to use kind of some of those OCD tendencies to fit into what you were doing in training and stuff. Um, do you feel that how you kind of or the alcohol consumption that became part of like your day to day, was that a way of like once you were not competitively in hockey, a way to kind of deal with some of those tendencies or those feelings?
Well, I think, and a lot of people that might be watching this can relate. There's a huge correlation between addiction and mental illness.
Yeah.
Um, for me, alcohol took away my anxiety, took away my depression, took away my OCD. And but the problem is that's not a great medication,
Yeah.
and you can't monitor it. So the better you feel, the more you drink, the more you drink, better you feel,
Mm.
and it's like back and forth, and then you're passing out and waking up the next day with the same old cycle going again. So yeah, it wasn't like I was a party boy going to the bars and trying to have fun and everything. No, I was isolating. I was isolating and drinking to kill the pain, to kill the pain.
And do you feel like is that kind of it was just a snowball of that just becoming harder to kill the pain that kind of led to you starting to have suicidal thoughts and then your attempt?
Well, I think with alcohol, what two beers would kill the pain or numb me or make me, a little buzz or whatever. And then it was four beers. Then it was eight beers. And it was 10, 12. It was up to, 20, 30 beers a day just to get me through a day. Now,
Mhm.
mind you, I'm Canadian and that's American beer, so it's probably not that potent.
Right. Is there anything that like you've learned through this process from talking about it now and being an advocate that you wish people understood about suicide or about suicidal thoughts?
Oh, yeah, there's a whole bunch. I mean, first of all, you got the symptoms, and they're so hard to spot because we're great actors. We're in despair, we're in darkness, and mostly doing it in silence. So we isolate.
Mhm.
So isolation is certainly something to look for. I was isolating for sure, and always ruminating on I'd be better off dead. I think I should die. My time here, for me, it was the pain. I had to choose the pain over. Let me backtrack. You know what? Suicide has been described as courageous and cowardly. It's neither. It's neither. It's a person in despair that is sick, that needs help,
Mhm.
and for me, I because I public speak now, I had to go back in my life and kind of put together a speech on my whole life, and I went, wow, boy, I didn't even realize that because I really had to analyze to put it in print and to put it in a speech.
Mhm.
So I really had to do a lot of reflecting, which was terribly
Mhm.
hard, really hard. Because then you look back and you go, man, you're one sick man, very, very, very sick. And because of the stigma surrounding mental illness, suicide, like I said, cowardly, courageous, it's neither. But there's a stigma surrounding it. And that's what makes it so hard for people like us to get help because we just want to hide.
Yeah.
And we become just terrific actors. Um, we I could walk into a room full of people and turn it on and just be you know you know social, get along, funny, right with it. But the second I leave that room, man, that head was going around and round and round, and then the anxiety comes, and then the suicidal thoughts start to come.
Mhm. Was part of the acting, like how you could turn it on, was part of that, or at any stage also for, in a sense of like trying to convince yourself maybe that you weren't where you were or feeling that you were feeling, or just
No,
making sure others didn't realize you were there?
it was just making sure others didn't realize that I was struggling. And again, we go to the stigma. No one wants to be labeled as struggling, mentally
Yeah.
ill, all those things. And that's my biggest goal, is to diminish or even squash that stigma.
Hmm.
Because if you get cancer, you can go to your boss and say, "Oh shoot, I just got diagnosed with cancer," and the boss is going to say, "Oh my God, what can we do? What can we do? Take time off, work from home, whatever." Uh, First of all, with mental illness, you're not even going to see your boss because of the stigma.
Mhm.
But I want to make it a better world where people, well, where HR uh, personnel makes it okay for somebody to come in and say, hey, you can talk to me, or we have anonymous hotlines that companies have set up to makes it safe for that employee to get the help
Mhm.
without the boss knowing.
Mhm.
We've come a long ways in the last, I don't know, 15 years, I think. We got a long ways to go, right?
Oh, 100% agree. And that's why we exist, right? Is a big part of that is the stigma. And there's,
Well,
in agriculture as well, there's so much more of that, don't let anyone know you're suffering, suck it up, don't even acknowledge that you're suffering, like the stigma be
well, with agriculture, you've got tough men and women
yeah.
uh, living, day to day, hard work, ranching, farming. But there's a lot of downtime, alone time. You're driving a tractor for hours, haying fields, or maybe on horseback, rounding up cow. You got a lot of time to think, and if you're in a bad place,
Mhm.
that's a lot of thinking. So I think the agriculture industry is something that I can certainly relate to. Um, I'm in the horse business here, but yeah, I just think that too much time to think and to dwell and to contemplate even suicide.
Do you have any suggestions for people when they are, I mean, we know that is part of agriculture, ranching, farming, what have you. Do you have any suggestions for like if you have those hours alone, is there something you do, reach out to a friend or connect with someone that kind of helps with that?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good support group. I didn't back when I was,
Right.
struggling. I mean, it was just my wife and me. A lot of like my wife tells a story. I was always the life of the party. Again, I turn that switch on and they're going, Clint's fine. He's great. He's funny. We drink beer, we rope and chase cows and blah, blah, blah. But it's that when you get away from that crowd and you got your alone time. Yeah, suggestions. Wow. Well, don't isolate. If you have to be around somebody 24 hours to keep you from like me pulling a trigger, then do it. I think you need to know, or people need to know that you're not alone. Like
Mhm.
so many people struggle with this. So many people. When I wrote my book, I wrote it to help people. Obviously, I put my email in the back of the book.
Wow.
I had no idea how many Clint Malarchuks were out there. I was getting I was getting emails, just mostly and current NHL hockey players, athletes of every sport, um, some farmers, ranchers that had read and they're like, well, thank you. Just saying thank you. I thought I was the only one because
Yeah.
we think we're the only one.
Mhm.
So the best advice I could give to answer your question is you're not the only one. You'd be shocked how many
Mhm.
people struggle. I mean, mightily struggle.
And how do we, if we think someone in our life is having suicidal thoughts, or feeling that, the world would be better off without them, how do we, if we're worried about that, try to connect to that person? Like, is there a way to do so without, um, I mean, we might upset them either way, but how would you recommend for people, like, if they even have like the smallest thought that that might be going on with someone in their life, how to connect to that person and let them know that they're there?
Well, that's a great question and a really hard one to answer because yeah, I have taken courses in suicide prevention on what to say and everything, but it's such a line of you're going to set them off, are you going to embarrass them, are they going to go into denial? So there's a lot of little intricacies that go into that question. I think the best thing, and my wife Joni, pretty much along that line, was just love and support. Um, Problem is, if you're suicidal, you're probably not going to tell anybody you're suicidal because it's embarrassing. It's a sign of weakness. And again, I'm going to say that again. It is nor It is not courageous, and it is not weakness, suicide or suicidal thinking. It's a sickness and it's an illness. And we as a society have to accept that instead of judging people, saying, "Oh, you're a coward, or you're weak. You can't
Mm,
cope with life."
yeah.
Well, it's a little more than coping with life. You got to understand there's usually a chemical imbalance of the brain. I don't produce enough serotonin, so that's a happy mood drug
Mm,
or chemical. And yeah, so it's a very sensitive way, but I think telling somebody that you care and you can't see them go,
mm,
that their life would be different.
mhm. Yeah,
That
I like that you said that. Like instead of just coming out and asking like are you having suicidal thoughts, letting them know that how important they are in your life and how different your life would be without them in it.
Yeah, and you're right. I think that's kind of what you got out of what I said. You said it way more elegantly than I would. But yeah, just saying, and you can flat out ask people,
Yeah.
are you done? Do you really want to go? And I think most people would say, I don't want to die, but I don't want to live in this pain. I think that would
Mm,
be the number one quote. As sad as it is, but it's a reality of the world we live in with I mean, our suicide rate now is starting younger and younger. We're getting kids at 10 years old, and um, and older people too. And I'll tell you one thing though, the when my wife was trying to get me help here, it was very frustrating for her because the medical system, or let's talk about the psychiatric system, is overwhelmed.
mhm.
Overwhelmed, and even more now that COVID has injured a lot of people. So it's hard to get in. Like I was on a waiting list for 3 months here, and at this doctor, 6 months for there, another doctor, and yeah, it's that's not right because Joni had a thing where she said somebody they were delaying her. Well, we can't get you in 3 months. And she said, well, he's going to be dead in 3 months.
Yeah.
That's the sad part.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to like we have crisis lines here that we try to promote and stuff, but you're right, when it comes to actually getting FaceTime with a doctor, and in Canada it's the every province is on its own, but it can be very challenging and can be very hard to navigate. And I remember Joni talking about it, and that's having someone who's going to be that advocate for you, right?
Yeah.
For someone that doesn't have that, I don't know how you try to get through that system.
I don't know. And that's what's frustrating because people are dying. They're crying for help, and then they can't get the help. Well, they can 3 to 6 months,
Hmm.
but not 3 to 6 months. They might that even makes them feel more hopeless.
Mhm.
3 months, 3 months. I get, they're just
Yeah.
like, and I relate. I totally relate to that. Waiting and rejection, or postponements. Here's a flyer. Have a good day. Call us in. Yeah. That it doesn't help people like us.
Mhm. Do you feel that going through that process um like how did that influence where you were at? Like were you taking that in, and then was that part of your thought process of like,
Well, at times I would say, and when you're that desperate and everything, you pardon my language here, but you don't give a shit anyways.
mhm,
So now it's another 3 months. So whatever, I don't care. You just become hopeless. But getting that 3 to 6 month waiting time just kind of pushes you further down, saying, well, it doesn't matter. I don't care. They don't care.
yeah.
System's broke. I'm better off dead.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a yeah, system's broken, they don't care thing, right? Is there with everything that's come online, do you feel that that can be helpful, like, for people watching? Like, I know when during the pandemic, I was doing therapy through, like, an app on my phone and living in the middle of nowhere. Like, do you think that that can be helpful, without being able to get in to see somebody, but having, like, the tools online that can connect you to somebody faster?
I think so for sure. Yeah, I mean, the damn internet or inner tube, whatever you want to call it, um, it's a blessing and a curse, right? There's so many good things we can do, get, like you just described, or there's a lot of false information,
Mhm,
people opinions, they're not doctors. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
mhm,
But yeah, I think that's a way that people can, like somebody, for example, um, could research me, suicide survivor.
mhm.
I've been very, very public. I wrote a book, I public speak, but they can go on my website and see interviews where I talk in depth about, you
Yeah,
know, my crazy thinking and you know, so that for me is kind of my um motivation
mhm,
is to get the feedback from people saying, "Oh my God, I got a kid right now I'm talking to. I can't remember how his psychiatrist um, heard a podcast that I was on and recommended it to him. He's 19 years old. He's an MMA fighter. He lives in North Carolina and he has severe OCD. So he reached out to me on an email and now we talk daily, 10, 20 minutes tops. And so to answer your question again, so that's been very helpful for him.
yeah,
And it is for me too, because I'm being of service.
right.
Like I
Yeah.
feel like, I feel that God spared me for those that are still suffering. I mean, I should be dead.
Mhm,
I got a bullet in my skull. I almost died in a hockey accident in 1989. Jugular vein was severed. And then there was one other deal where I almost died. I had a reaction to painkillers and my heart stopped. So I've almost died 3 times. So you kind of go, I guess God spared me. My work's not done yet here. And I think about God shots, and God shots are everybody prays to God or their God or whatever, and they don't get an answer. But we do get answers, and I had to answer that God shot that after my suicide attempt. I'm here. I'm still alive. What is my purpose? Why did God spare me?
mhm.
It's why I do what I do.
So have those feelings ever come back, or because after that you were able to say, "Why am I still here? This is my purpose," that you haven't gone back to a place where you have suicidal feelings?
Um, you know what? I'm probably the opposite now. I have a real fear of dying now. I don't want to die. I want to live. I want to stay on this earth as long as I can. I do really struggle still with my mental illness, mostly depression and anxiety and the OCD. And it usually, and a lot of times it forms up in insomnia. And when you're up at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, man, you think a lot,
Yeah.
and your head starts to spin, and I think about death, not suicide, but dying, and then I get really grateful that I'm still alive,
Mhm,
but I'm suffering with depression and anxiety at 2 in the morning.
mhm.
So I'm like, ah, yeah, ugh. It's hard. Mental illness is tough, man. Um, and I hate it when people judge us because walk a mile in our shoes. I have a very good colleague. He's a veterinarian, and we do a lot of cattle work together and horses and that. And he was a great supporter of mine. Never struggled, you know. And how would he be such a great supporter had he not ever struggled? Well, so recently he had to go on some medication for I think it was a heart deal, and that medication made him have suicidal thoughts. And he rolled into my property here and he said, "Oh my God, Clint, I just got to hug you. and tell you, I have so much respect for you because I walked in those shoes for 2 weeks of suicidal thinking and depression and all that. But again, I want to reiterate, he was my best supporter, best friend, but he really, really understood it a whole lot more
Hmm.
because he went through it.
Hmm. Or do you have any advice for people that are being that support person or trying to be that support person, or they've like acknowledged that they have someone in their life that they could support, when it comes to just, to me, like not judging, like you said, is a big one. But I think one of the things that we talk about too is like validating, understanding that like you don't have to understand their feelings, but validating like what they say is their truth, what they're feeling is their truth.
Yeah, that's a great word. I've never used that one before. I'm going to write that down. Yeah, to validate, say, hey, I'm sure what you're going through, and even that is almost like, I'm sure
Yeah.
whatever you're going through is real. Maybe say, hey, I understand. Even though you don't understand, just say, this has got to be super painful. That'd be the words I'd use.
Hmm.
The pain you're going through, how do you do it?
Hmm.
Um, let's get you help. I'm here to support you. Uh, I maybe can't totally understand this pain, but you know what? I think everybody in the world, not everybody, but I think a lot of people have had suicidal thoughts to a degree, very small
Hmm.
degree. And there's the big degrees. So empathy, um, it's like I when I speak a lot of times I speak about mental illness and everything, but there's also emotional distress. And emotional distress can be a divorce, it can be well, losing a loved one. You're not mentally ill, but you're feeling depression, you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling not yourself.
Yeah.
So I think most people have had some sort of emotional distress. And if you haven't lived life enough. But yeah, I think emotional distress, and then if you put it in that context rather than mental illness, say, and that person that's not mentally ill is talking to somebody that explains their feelings, goes, crap, that divorce I went through 8 years ago, oh my God, that almost killed me.
Hmm.
I was so anxious, I couldn't sleep. Yeah, so we can all relate to it to a degree, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we don't often talk about that emotional distress. We like to say, well, let's talk about anxiety, or let's talk about depression, or let's talk about what have
Yeah,
you, but not necessarily about emotional distress, which, yeah, you don't get through life without that, right?
right,
And what
exactly.
what could be emotional distress for me in my life or you in your life doesn't need to be the same thing. We're all going to react to different
Yeah.
experiences differently or loss differently, but important to acknowledge that we all have those different things that cause that, and what does that mean, and what feelings are there.
Well, that way you avoid the two words mental illness. And a lot of people
Mhm.
don't want to be labeled, I got mental illness. Well, you know what? I do. I'm okay with it. But because of the stigma, a lot of people, but you can, if you put it around that other word, two words, emotional distress, they're more likely to be accepting, saying, yeah, this is a bad time in my life, or
Yeah.
I went through a bad time. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be a really great way to start a conversation with somebody so that it's a bit more of a safer possible conversation for them to engage with.
I think we just need to talk all the time. The more we talk about suicide prevention, mental illness, getting well, emotional distress, all these things are going to make it okay for more and more people to accept, hey, I'm struggling, I'm going to get help.
110% agree with that. Is there anything you feel that we've missed in our conversation today that you would like people to know about suicide or suicidal thoughts, or anything that we've touched on?
Well, I have an uncle. He's passed now, and he was a pastor up in Canada, and his daughter struggled with suicidal thoughts and everything. And I thought what he told her was pretty cool. Said, you don't want to do suicide. You might regret it tomorrow. It's kind of funny, kind of, but think about it. If you can just get through that day,
Mm,
tomorrow might be better. Usually will be. For me, my worst time is the mornings. A lot of people, especially in the winter,
right.
sun gets lower earlier. It's 4 o'clock. It's pitch black. So a lot of them, it's the evenings. But I'm a morning guy. I get my anxiety ramped up pretty good when I get up in the morning, or my insomnia at 2 in the morning. and
Yeah.
the thing I do, I've got a little checklist. I work out, the sooner the better.
Mm,
It doesn't have to be crazy working out. Like, I just got to get the blood moving. I
mhm,
work out pretty hard now, but those that just want to take some advice, just get that blood going, go for a walk, go to the gym, walk the dogs, whatever it might be. For me, I take medication and not embarrassed to tell anybody that. Some people are anti-medication. Well, I don't like the alternative. Okay. I do not like the alternative. I do not want to be going down that black hole again. And the medication I take, it just helps enhance my serotonin production so that I'm not so susceptible to anxiety and depression.
right.
But the biggest thing, yeah, I'd say working out, take my medication, um, counseling,
Mm,
therapy. If I start spiraling, before I'd like, oh no, I'm all right. I'm all right. No, when I spiral, I'm the first to pick up the phone and
mm,
get get a counselor or a therapist to walk me through some of these things. Um, I have severe PTSD, so I have to keep on top of that. But the biggest thing I think I could give people the advice for, and don't get intimidated when I say this, is be of service.
mhm,
For me, being of service is doing a podcast like this
mm,
to get the message out, to public speak, to answer my emails that people are in distress. Uh, uh, and it's almost selfish because being of service, you think you're serving others. No, I'm serving myself. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel productive. It makes me feel positive. So be of service, and you don't have to join the Rotary Club or baby steps. Open the door for somebody. Smile to
yeah.
people. Get out of yourself and into others. Is kind of the summation of that whole deal.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that, especially when we're going through something. It's so, I mean, we've already talked about isolation, but one of the first things we do is pull in. So if we can try to do, even if it's opening the door, smiling at someone, just starting small, but
Yeah,
things that pull us out of that self-isolation.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I just and it's hard when you're depressed to be of
Yeah.
service. It's hard, but if you just do it and then you see somebody go, "Thank you," all of a sudden you feel a little better.
Hmm.
And you feel a little better about yourself and what you're trying to do. Yeah, baby step it, open the door for somebody, carry groceries. I don't know, help an old lady. um, I think of my mom all the time. She's 86, and she said a lot of times, oh, I met the nicest guy, he helped me do this and that. And I'm like, well, I do the same thing for another old lady down here, and I'm so glad that somebody's doing it for her.
Yeah, yeah,
you
for
know
sure.
yeah.
Where can people find you or find your book? How do people get a hold of you?
Uh, I got a website, malarchuk.com. And, you can get my book on Amazon or any of those big sellers. Definitely on the internet for sure.
What is it called?
Well, it's got two titles. So
Okay.
I go with the Crazy Game. That was a Canadian title. And at first, I didn't like that title because it had the word crazy in it. And I talked to the publisher and I said, I'm not sure. We might, we're going to, that stigma thing, crazy.
Yeah.
And they said, Clint, do you know how many times you said it in the book that you thought you were crazy or going crazy? And I went, yeah, I did. And in the US, but you can get either one in either country. It's called a Matter of Inches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely going to add that to my reading list. And thank you so much for not just joining us today to have this conversation, but for everything that you're doing through your service and giving back and making sure this is a topic that we're talking about.
Likewise, right back at you.
If anyone is looking to find out more information, they can head over to our website, domore.ag. Thanks for joining us.